Hi, it's Bren. We're doing an episode of Things by Bren. And today, I know I always say today because today is always a great day. It's always a day that you can do new things. You can work on that purpose, you can work on yourself, and you can change others. You can help by being who you want to be, doing what you want to do with your life, and encouraging. So today is a good day. Today we have Sheila Bruno, and she's an author. She wrote a book called Wife After Prison. I'm going to let her tell her story because, yes, it touches on incarceration. That's what the book is about. She is married to somebody that did 28 years in the state of Texas. Am I saying that right?
State of Texas, yes.
And they got married afterwards, but they were high school sweethearts. She was, anyways. I'm not sure if they dated, but she was infatuated with him in high school. And Sheila, just tell us a little bit about yourself and your background. But the main thing I want you to tell them is what made you want to write this book.
Okay, thank you, first of all, for having me on your show. It's always an opportunity, and I just want to say thank you for not dropping the mic. Not dropping the mic, having a platform to allow our authors to share their stories. I am from Houston, Texas. I'm married to Kevin Bruno. I have 2 daughters and 5 grandsons. Kevin and I dated in the 9th grade, 1976, MB Smiley High School. And he liked me too. So we dated in the 9th grade. And at the end of the summer, I never saw him again until 2014. I was working overseas in Bagram, Afghanistan. I worked as a civilian contractor for 10 years. 10 years I was overseas from Iraq to Kuwait to Afghanistan. And so I'm sitting at my desk March the 5th, 2014, and I get a friend request. And at first I had to Kevin Bruno, I haven't seen Kevin Bruno, and so of course I was excited and I was like, he has got to be married. I know he must be married because I'm thinking fairy tales don't come true for girls like me. But anyway, I accepted his friend request and we started chatting back and forth. And then it was one period where it just said, Kevin is typing. Kevin is typing. I'm like, he sure is typing a lot. What he's trying to tell me? But when the message popped up, it was very, very lengthy. And he said, and that's when he told me that he had been incarcerated. And I'm like, okay. He said, I've been incarcerated twice. The first time for aggravated robbery, he was sentenced to 25 years. He was 20 years old at the time. He was sentenced to 25 years. And so of the 25, he did 8.5. Released in 92, didn't learn his lesson. And within 9 months, he was gone back to prison. And this time he had a 60-year sentence. So he told me all of that. And of the 60 years, he did 20 years. So accumulative, he did a total of 28 years incarcerated.
Well, at least he was honest with you about it, right?
Yeah, he was. He never disclosed it because I told him, I said, look, I normally run a background check on anybody who's interested in me. Well, and he said, well, you can if you want to. He said, but I'll tell you anything that you want to know. And so, and the thing is, earlier that year, I had prayed, God, I want to be found. I'm ready for my husband. I want him tall. I just had this petition prayer laid out. So I want to be found. I want him tall. He has to love you and all of this stuff. And so Kevin met the criteria. He met it. So when he said, Sheila, he said, I want to marry you, because we was talking every day via Skype. We started Skyping. And every day he would call me, I would have just a laundry list of questions. I was asked, what is this? What is that? What are they? Every day. And he would freely answer all of the questions that I would ask him. And so, about the 3rd day, he said, Sheila, he said, I want to marry you. He said, the next woman that I marry, he said, the next woman that I sleep with will be my wife. And that's one of the petition prayers I had prayed. I was like, Lord, I said, I want him to say to me that there would be no intimacy before marriage. I said, I don't want me to have to say, look, I ain't sleeping with you until you marry me. And so when he said that, I was like, he just say what I thought he said.
Which is
Yeah,
unusual in today's world.
yeah. And so anyway, within 7 days, he said, I want to marry you. He said, but I want to go talk to your mom, even though I was 53 years old. He said, I want to go talk to your mom first. And I said, okay. And so he did, and she blessed on it. And so 53 days later, we were married after not seeing him for 38 years. And I have to say this because I was on a podcast, and the lady said, you're very intelligent and articulate and all of that. And she said, 53 days. And this is the thing. If the listeners hear that I married him within 53 days after not seeing him for 38 years, you're going to miss the message.
Right.
If you just focus on, she married him with, who does that? If you just focus on the 53 days, you're going to miss the message. And my message is to seek to understand, not to deny prison has side effects.
And it does.
And it does.
Very much does.
It
Not
does.
to mention, in 53 days, you guys were very much in love.
53 days.
Yes. Very much in love for that.
Yeah. Yeah, 53 days. And the reason why it was so easy for me to get attached to him so quickly is because of his mannerism in school.
Mm-hmm.
You know, even at the age of 16, he never tried to force me to do anything inappropriate with him for that age. None of that. You know, he just treated me very, very kind, because back then I had little to no self-esteem. I wasn't the most attractive woman. I was like olive oil, Popeye's girlfriend then, right? So for somebody to want me, I was like, wow. So I felt real privileged. Mm-hmm. So that's why it was so easy for me to hook my caboose up to his train after 38 years. But I came to realize that was a form of delusional thinking. Delusional thinking that that this would be a continuation of the courtship that we had in school, right?
A lot of time has passed since then.
Right, a lot of time had passed since then, and the first year and a half, amazing. Breakfast in bed. I would walk in my office and I would have just flowers just because. Mm-hmm. The perfect greeting cards, all of that. And I was like, oh, I am the luckiest woman in the world. And then going into that second year, right at the end, going into the beginning of the second year, I began to notice some changes. And before that, he would say, I need to go get me some help. And I didn't know he was dealing with anything. And I was like, okay, baby, okay. I didn't know. And I never asked why. Why do you feel like that? Mm-hmm. And he would say it in a jokingly way. And I think he was saying that just to feel me out, to see what my reaction would be. Right. Yeah. But then he, like I said, he began to change, both in personality and character. He became easily irritated by the least thing. I mean, the least thing. He had mood swings. Mm-hmm. I never knew who I was getting. He might leave as Dr. Jekyll and come back as Mr. Hyde.
Yep.
I never knew, you know, when he just scream and holler to the top of his voice. And when our house went from calm to chaos,
which is, it's very disruptive.
Yeah, and it went from like a peaceful environment, and it was just polluted with a lot of negative energy. And I didn't understand what had happened to my amazing husband. You know, someone who said I was his soulmate. And then, you know, it was like he treated me like his most hated cellmate. Yeah. And so Kevin and I separated 3 times. And it was hard, because I remember the following Monday that I was going to file for divorce. I was like, God, I'm giving this back. I'm good. Right. And so I was just laying in bed and I was crying and I was just praying, God, what happened? What happened to my amazing husband? And I remember God speaking, saying, Google, can a boy become a man in prison? And so I reached over and grabbed my laptop, that now occupied the space where Kevin was, because I stayed in bed.
Right.
I was in such a depressed mood, sleeping pills were my meal of choice. Some days that's all I put in my mouth. And so I hopped up and I grabbed the laptop and I Googled, can a boy become a man in prison? God is so awesome. He is so awesome. And so when I did that, this laundry list of websites popped up. The very first one by American psychologist Craig Haney, The Psychological Impact of Incarceration. And what I read is what I was living. And then the next one was post-incarceration syndrome and relapse. And what I read, and it was about Terry Gorski, what I read was what I was living. And I boo-hooed and I cried because I said, I now have my answer. I now have a name for the behavior. And so again, Kevin and I were separated. So I sent it to him and I called him and I said, I'm going to send you something over. Will you read it? And he agreed to read it. And then a couple of days later, he called me back. He said, yeah. He said, this is it. He said, this is what I'm going through.
He probably didn't even have a name for it himself.
He did not. He did not. He didn't know what. And that was so frustrating to him because he was dealing with all of this stuff. And then you got the wife, you got these responsibilities now. So it took a toll on him. It really, really took a toll on him. And and by this time though, I was like, forget him right now. I need support. I'm taking sleeping pills the time I open my eyes.
Right.
I'm taking pills to go back to sleep, right? And so I needed support. And I went onto the internet and I was looking for support for wives after prison. And I couldn't find anything after prison. And I wasn't
Lots of it during prison, what you go through.
Yeah. And so right. And I wasn't really big on Facebook at the time, but I said, let me go to Facebook. And so when I went to Facebook, I keyed in prison wives and hundreds of groups popped up. They have them for all states, for all different units that your loved ones in. And I was like, wow. So I joined 26 of those groups. And one day I sit down and I calculated all of the members in each of the groups, and it was a total of over 26,000 people, right? So I didn't say anything. I didn't do no posting. I didn't do no commenting because I wanted to see what was the conversation like in the room. I just didn't need no social group. I needed support for after prison.
Yeah, you needed
right. And so it was none of that. None of that. So one day I guess I had to get up the nerve, and I just went in each of those groups and I post, have you heard of post-incarceration syndrome? Right? And everything came back no.
Yeah, because it's not talked about.
Yeah, everything came back no. And then I went back to Kevin and we just kind of almost looked at each other like, we got to talk about this. We got to talk about this, and we got to be open and transparent about it. So we just started doing Facebook Lives. We started doing Facebook Lives, being transparent, pulling back the sheet on our relationship, the nakedness, the ugliness, and all of that. And when
you get to a solution, that's what you have to do.
Yeah. And so, and then that's when all of the messages start coming in my inbox and all of that. Like, oh my God, one lady said, oh my God, had I known this, maybe me and my husband would still be together.
Right. A lot of people give up.
Yeah. And another lady said, had I known this, maybe my husband would still be alive because 3 days after he got out of prison, he committed suicide.
A lot of people can't cope.
Yeah. And so the question was like, what happened in 3 days? I said, that's not the question. What happened in prison that he couldn't deal with? Was he raped? Did he see somebody getting raped? Did he see somebody getting stabbed? Do we even know?
You
Right?
probably will never know.
Yeah, we'll never know. And so that's how Wife After Prison, the private support group started, because I was like, we got to talk about this. So now the group has grown to over 1,300 members. It's not the typical prison wife group. No, this is a library of sorts. You come there to get educated. I have a lot of information in there. And for those who don't know what post-incarceration syndrome is, it's a cluster of mental disorders that occur in those who are currently incarcerated, formerly incarcerated, most severe in those who have spent a lot of time in solitary confinement.
Yes.
Right? And
yes.
so I was sharing my story once, and this lady said, "Oh, that's just PTSD." I said, "Hold on, you can't edit my story for me. You can't edit my story for me. It's more than PTSD. Seek to understand, not to deny." Right? Because with post-incarceration syndrome, the set of mental disorders, one of them is institutionalization personality trait. One of them is PTSD.
Yes.
One of them is social sensory deprivation. One of them is substance abuse and antisocial personality trait. So
and
these
are all together.
You put it all together, and why? Mm-hmm. Why? Yeah.
And how do you treat something like that?
This is the deal. So Kevin eventually went to counseling, and I went to counseling, because the deal, we didn't have a marriage problem. Kevin needed to go and deal with what he called the monsters under his bed, right? And so the monsters of his bed, under his bed, became the monsters in my head. So it wasn't a marriage thing. So we went to counseling separately. And he was doing amazing. I was like, oh, I got my man back. I got my man back, right? Because she gave him the tools that he needed. Another term I had never heard of was arrested development. His mom told me, because within 30 days, I saw some behavior that I was like, this is somebody his age shouldn't be doing that or saying that or whatever and reacting like that. And one day his mom said, she said, "Sheila," because I called and I said, "I got to talk to somebody. I got to tell somebody about this." Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so she said, "Sheila, Google arrested development." And so when I did, I just saw a medical term for arrested development. I didn't connect the dots. So I just, I was like, okay. But as time went on, I said, I need to revisit this. As time went on and the behaviors worsened, I said, I need to revisit this. And when I did, I found the term arrested development as it pertains to psychology. It's when the psychological development is incomplete. And it's due to trauma. Whatever age that person experienced that type of trauma, it's a possibility, a high probability that their psychological development stopped.
And that makes sense.
And for Kevin to have trauma all through his childhood, and again, he goes to prison, that trauma is exacerbated, right? So when he came out, Kevin came out as a 15-year-old, grown in stature, grown in body, a grown man, but he had a child's mind.
Right.
Right? And it's women in the group who have said, it's like I have another child.
And I can
yeah. And I remember a guy getting out who did 40 years, and I went to pick him up and take him on an interview. And back in the 70s, men dressed with their shirts unbuttoned all the way down to their belly button, right? He came out like that. And I was like, no, we can't wear that one to the interview. No, yeah. So they really get psychologically stuck. They get stuck.
So how did you cope? You have all of these things that are developing in your husband, this man that you love, this man that you married, this man that you are going to spend the rest of your life with, that you have these hopes and dreams and plans with, and then
bam. And I'm going to tell you, I've been a believer the majority of my life. And that's one of the things that he said that so attracted him to me, because of my prayer life, because of my relationship with God. Strong believer. And so I had to lean on God. And when I felt like giving up, my mom was like, Sheila, stand on that word. Stand on that word. And so I did. And that's what kept me from filing for divorce the first time, because I had to take a step back, and I just, did an overview of his life. And this man, had such a traumatic life. And I started studying trauma. I started studying all of this stuff.
And a lot of people don't understand what trauma is.
Oh man, whether it's a big T or a little t, yes. Trauma can devastate a person.
And it's different for everybody.
Yeah, and it's different from everybody. And this is what I tell people also, is that prison is not a one size fits all.
No, it's not.
Yeah, it's not. How it may affect one person may not affect, the next person that way. But this is the deal too, Brenda. Look, so in the group, like I said, I'm educating. I'm educating. We're not talking about nothing else. I don't need no videos and no YouTube, nothing. Because when I needed this information, I couldn't find it. So there was this one young lady, and her guy was getting out within, he had did 16 years. And so he got out, and I was like, well, I'm not going to hit her up and see how it's going or whatever. I'm just going to let her reach out or whatever. Within 3 days, she sent me a message. Oh my God, Sheila. She said, post-incarceration is so real. She said, I have to admit, I didn't believe it. She said, I was in your group, but I did not believe it. And she was telling me all of the behaviors and stuff. And this lady had uprooted her life and moved to another state where he was being paroled to, quit a job and all of that. And then within 3 days, she said, I can't deal with this. I can't deal with this. People don't understand. A lady sent me an email. She wasn't a part of the group. I'm not sure how she found me, but she did. And she sent me an urgency email. Call me, please. Call me, 911. And I was like, okay. So I called her. This is what people don't get. She said, I got a black eye. She said, I have a black eye. My husband was gone for 10 years. And he's been out 6 months. And I said, was he like that before prison? She said, never. She said, he never laid his hands on me. And 6 weeks later, she called me. She said, I have a dislocated jaw. Yeah. I said, you can't stay in that relationship. I said, you can't stay there. You have to leave. And she said, I am. She said, I'm planning on when Friday, she said, I'm going to, I think it was either Alabama or Atlanta. And I said, okay. She called me and she said, I'm leaving. And I said, okay, call me when you get there. And I never heard from her again. And I reached out trying to hear from her. I never heard from her again. Yeah. And so the thing is, learn behavior, because in prison, and especially in the States, you got to survive.
You do.
You have to really survive. And a lot of the guys have told me that I hated the person that I had to become.
Just to survive.
Yeah, just to survive. Even that with Kevin. Kevin was bullied so much as a child. He said when he went to prison, he was determined that he would not be bullied. So he came a monster. And unfortunately, that monster just didn't stay behind. Some of those characteristics was deep-seated.
They come out a monster.
They come out.
Yes. And then they don't know how to adjust.
And the thing is, and I have to say this, Brenda, this thing, and Kevin and I were talking, I said, man, this conversation, once we think we got it, it's like an onion. We pull it back, there's something else. We pull it back, and then there's something else to this. And so I have to say, by me working overseas, I was making 6 figures consecutively, right? So I didn't want to pressure him about, no household bills. He would contribute whatever I say, give whatever he would contribute, right? But then after I had retired from working overseas or whatever, I needed him to contribute more, right? And so one day I said, I need you to be the head of the household. Whew.
Now comes more responsibility and probably a trigger.
Man, I said, I need you to be more responsibility. And I'll never forget, we were in the den and he was getting ready to open the blinds. And he turned and he looked at me and he said, Sheila, he said, what does that look like? He said, prison strips you of responsibilities. You're told what to do, when to go to bed, when to get up. He said, you know what you want in a husband. I don't know if I need to know how to be that man. And I was like, wow. Yeah.
Even think of it that way.
Didn't think of it.
For the amount of time that he served.
Yes.
Because
yes.
He was a young man when he went in.
Yes.
Right out of school.
Yeah.
Was an older man when he came out. So
and it was
everything he learned from life really was either from his childhood or from prison.
Right. And the things we as family members take for granted. There was one lady told me, she said, I just get so irritated that, he doesn't cut off the lights when he come out of the room. And I said, ma'am, how long was he away? Mm-hmm. And she said 25 years. I said, for 25 years, he hadn't had to hit a light switch.
Is there.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's the things that we take for granted. But this is the thing I say to returning citizens. Because it takes a toll on the family. And especially when, your behavior is so erratic and your behavior is so, it's just unnecessary and all of that. And I tell them to ask for feedback.
Yes.
Ask your loved one, how am I doing? Mm-hmm. Don't because let me tell you, this thing can put you so in a box and you're walking on those eggshells that you're scared to say anything to them. Because again, you don't know whether you're going to, mm-hmm. You don't know whether you're going to get a yes, baby, or
and that doesn't even, that's in the home. So when they go to work, they carry that to the job.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's everywhere that they touch. And when now you're dealing with the public at work, and you don't know how they're going to react to you.
Yes.
So then that becomes another trigger.
Right.
And home and take it out.
It's one lady had told me that her son had gotten a good job at UPS. And the supervisor knew of his background, of course. And he said, she said her son called her and he was crying. And he said, Mom, I got to quit my job. He said, I got to quit. He said, because if I don't, I'm going back to prison. He said, because this man keeps, just picking on him, nitpicking and everything. And he knew. Yeah. And so he said, I got to quit. And he quit. He said, I'd rather quit and find another job, even though you got to deal with the behavior.
Right.
Right. You can't quit every job because you don't like what a supervisor say. But right. This is why I'm saying, awareness needs to be brought to societies. Awareness.
There needs to be some counseling out there.
Yes.
They can go to from counselors who understand the process of prison.
Yes. It's one lady, and I tell you, this was the best thing that I had ever heard in one of the groups. She says, my husband sees a counselor once a month. Mm-hmm. She had a counselor on her husband's visiting list. So she wasn't just putting
while he was incarcerated?
While he was incarcerated. Mm-hmm. While he was incarcerated. And that's my vision and that's my goal, because the guys on the inside, they don't want to deal with the counselors and the psychiatrists on the inside, because they buddies with everybody. So they don't trust the confidentiality.
And they can't.
Yeah.
And if you're not in there and you don't understand why you can't explain that.
Right.
Unless you've experienced, you just really cannot explain it.
Right. 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 It was one gentleman I had a conversation with. He did 32 years, accumulative 32, because he said, I've been in and out all of my life. He said, but I heard you on a podcast and you were talking about adverse childhood experiences and the trauma and how it has an impact and it can lead you to whatever. And he said that resonated so with me. He said, when I was in prison, he said 1999, he said, I had so much noise in my head. He said, and I took a chance to go to medical. And he said, the first thing that man did was pull out a drawer and a bottle of pills and hand me a pill. And he said, I left there and I was so frustrated because he said, I just needed to talk.
Right.
And he wanted to put,
for you.
Yeah, he said he wanted to put me, and he said I guess they call them bobbleheads or wobbleheads, just walking around there. Yeah, that's all they wanted to do. So there's no, and again, I can only speak for Texas. I can't speak for all of the states, but there's no trust. They don't trust the system, right?
And then there's reason behind that.
Absolutely, there is.
Care about them for them to trust the system.
Absolutely. And so that's my vision. And I'm just believing God for a team of people that we can send independent counselors in there to start just, talking to them and then follow them on the outside. Because I'm telling you,
and they need that. You need to continue it, because when they come out, now they've opened up a brand new world, especially if they've done years, multiple decades.
Yeah.
They come out and the world has changed.
Yes.
The computers,
everything
is completely
everything has changed.
Even the mentality of people has changed.
And the thing is, it's three guys that I know of, and this is why I talk a lot on reentry and relationships, because the first thing they want to do is get in a relationship.
Sure they do.
And right now, three guys are back inside with a motion to provoke their parole because of reentry and relationships. And I try to tell them, I said, I understand that you ain't had but can you give yourself a little more time? You done did 30 years without it. Can you just give, and they are back inside because of reentry and relationships and because of aggression.
They don't know how to have relationships.
They don't know how to have relationships. You have no idea on how to have a relationship. But I'm so thankful, Brenda, that awareness. My thing was this: God, if I could just touch one person or just say one person, whatever, I would be okay. But this thing, he said, no, I don't want you to just touch the US. You're going to take this thing international, in which now, I have an international platform where I was spoken. So it's not just a USA, a United States thing.
It's all over. It's all over. No matter where you live. That's right.
Yeah, it's all over. And that's why I say, seek to understand and not to deny. And the only reason why stigma exists is because understanding does not. These are they've done their time.
Yeah, they have. People don't want to forgive.
People
don't want to love. They want to judge. They want to stick them in a corner. They want to say, oh, that person did this, that person did that. But there's a lot of people that haven't went to prison that are more evil and more corrupt than people who have time and been caught.
Yeah, and I said, until it shows up at their household and their front door, then they're going to want the compassion. They're going to want the empathy, whatever. So just show it, because I can't imagine. I had talked to a guy today. He did 16 years. Well, cumulative, I think about 30 something, but the last bid was 16. He's been diagnosed with prostate cancer. And he's going through this by himself because his family is not from here. His mom is 82 years old. He's sleeping in his car a lot of times. And he's just trying to stay out of prison. He said, but Miss Bruno, he said, the other day, I just almost just told my back just to send me back. Yeah, so he has surgery in a couple of days, and I'm just going to be working on. I said, you can't have surgery, and who's going to take care of you, whatever. So I'm going to be working on, getting some donations so I can at least get him a hotel room or something for a week or so until he recover.
Right.
because he can't live like that. I'm like,
No,
wow.
if you have no support,
Yeah, if you don't have no support, and that's the
then you
thing,
got to go back.
Kevin had an excellent support system. For 28 years, his parents visit him every month. Every month he had money on his book. When he got out, he had a place to stay. He had a vehicle. He had that support. But
There's
those
a
are
lot of guys
those
that don't.
a lot of guys do not. And Kevin was telling me about a guy that he did time with. And he said, I think the guy did over 50 years or so. But whenever he said, when he got out and he got that $50 when you leave, and then $50 when you go to your parole office,
Mhm.
he said that guy took that money and went to the liquor store.
Yeah.
And he bought him some liquor and he sit there and he drank it all. And he went back in there and pretended as he was going to rob them.
Just so
And
you can
after
go
he
back.
did that, he went back,
That is a
he went
mindset thing.
back.
Yes.
Yeah, and he
Because
said,
he's going back to what he knows.
he sat down. He sat down in front of the liquor store and waited on the police to come. And he told them to take me back. He said, send me back. He said, after all of this time, I'm released with $100 and a nothing. So take me back. And they did. And it's so sad.
It's
Yeah,
very
it's
sad.
sad. It's very sad.
So you are putting these books into prisons.
I am,
And you're doing
because
it for free.
I'm doing it for free. I'm doing it for free because, like I say, in the group, the women were getting, the family members were getting, and I was like, God, they need to get it on the inside.
They
And
do.
so after I published my book, I said, you know what? I'm just gonna donate a copy to the prisons. And so it's a process. You call the chaplain and tell them about the book, whatever, and they give the okay. And I have not had any chaplain to say no. And so my goal is every state in the US. And so far I've completed 13 states. And I've had chaplains to call and say, can you send us some more? Like,
Yeah.
yes, yeah.
It gets
But
expensive, though.
yeah, it's very
Very expensive.
expensive. And so, but just to have a guy to write a letter and say, thank you for writing your book. I go to the post office and I get those letters and I can't leave. I just sit there and I boo-hoo and I cry
That's awesome.
because they said, I now know what's wrong with me. I know what's wrong. One guy said he looked at the title, Wife After Prison. His girlfriend had sent him a copy and he said he didn't want to read it because he thought it was something about how to get her to marry him, right? And he said, one day I read it and I tell you, this guy wrote me such a letter, just had me just so in tears. He was like, thank you for writing your book. I now understand. He said, I am going to counseling while I'm on the inside. He said, I got to go talk to something. He said, because I am Kevin.
Right.
He said, I'm Kevin.
Right.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
if people want to help you do this, how do they do that? You have a donation place or?
Yeah, I do a
How
book
that works.
books behind bars, Cash App, $ Wife After Prison. And in the reference, just put BBB and I'll know it's Book Behind Bars. And that money, I take and I don't profit nothing. I don't profit anything from this. It's just so that I can get these books. I wish that I could donate more than a few copies per unit, but unfortunately, being on this self-published and all of this, I can't. But yeah, if anybody wants to, you can reach out to me at wifeafterprison.com. On my social media platforms. Everything is Wife After Prison. So yeah, I welcome all donations so we can get this message out to these guys.
Absolutely.
And not let them
You
get
can
it.
also contact me. I will help out any way I can. And I want you guys to understand that's watching this, that prison changes people. And a lot of times people say change is good, and change is good if it's in the right direction. But sometimes it changes people and it can make them worse.
Yeah.
And it just amplifies what's already inside. And if they can't redirect that anger, that frustration, that whatever's going on with inside of them, then they can come out that monster that Sheila was talking about. Some don't. We're not saying this happens to everybody, but for those that it does, it is real.
Yes.
And it is a lifelong struggle.
Yes.
And she's wrote this book to make people aware. She's putting it into prisons to help educate. And not only the people that are coming out of prison, also their family members, so that they can
Absolutely.
understand what that
Yes.
person's going through, so they have that support system.
Yeah.
And if there's any counselors out there that might want to donate some of their time for this, please get in contact with us because it's needed. It is
Mhm.
needed.
Mhm.
Or if you charge very minimal rates, it's very needed. This is all nonprofit. So if you're out there and want to help, please contact us. And Sheila, can you hold up a copy of your book and kind of tell us
Can.
how many
I-
pages it is and that
Okay.
kind of thing?
It's just a copy of the book.
Uh-huh.
And it's a very easy read. It's 210 pages,
Okay.
right? And so it takes them on a journey on what life was before
Mhm.
I got married, and then the disruption. And then I talk a little about counseling and how to find the right counselor, because Kevin had to go through to two. The first one couldn't touch him.
Work out right.
Yeah, she couldn't touch him, but the second one,
It's not the normal counseling that everybody thinks they're going to
no, it's not the normal counseling. But when he went to that second one, I could tell that she had cracked him open, because when every time he came back, you can tell that he had been very, very emotional. And then she started giving him tools. And as long as he was doing the work, the thing is, you got to do the work.
right.
You know, no one goes from kindergarten to college without doing the
No,
work.
that's
So
what you
in life,
yeah.
you have to do the work. And so when he stopped doing the work, then that's when, you know, he said, this needs to be a lifestyle for me.
It is. It's a change.
Yeah, yeah,
It's a
yeah,
change.
it is.
So
It
where
is.
can they buy this book at?
The book is available on Amazon. Again, Wife After Prison, Caught in the Aftermath. And it's also available on my website, wifeafterprison.com.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
Well, if anybody has any questions, wants to talk about this, if you have a loved one that's going through this, or if you're going through it yourself, please contact us. We'll see if we can put you in touch with people that can help you find the right resources, the right counselors. This is needed. We understand that. And we want to make sure everybody knows that it's okay.
Yeah,
It's okay to ask for help.
it's
So,
okay.
yes,
Yeah.
it is okay. Well, Sheila, thank you so much for
Thank
coming
you.
on and just telling us, it's exposing the naked truth, not only
Yes.
about your marriage and your husband, but what actually is needed
Yeah.
to
I
help.
I just took me out of the equation. We
Right.
took ourselves out of the equation because we understood this is bigger than us.
It
You
is.
know, even in the
And love can conquer.
yeah,
Love can conquer.
yeah. Well, thank you so much. And again, I thank you for not dropping the mic and using your platform to spread the word. I really, really appreciate it. I don't take
Quite
these
welcome.
opportunities lightly. Yeah, I appreciate it.
Well, thank you for writing your book and thank you for caring.
Okay,
It's
my
appreciated.
pleasure.
Thank you.
All right.